It's 11:47 on a Tuesday night. You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, doing math in your head. Rent is due Friday, your check hits Thursday, and somewhere between those two dates, your entire financial life is dangling by a thread. Now, picture somebody else. Same age, same city, probably makes about the same money you do. But this person, they sleep like a rock, because sitting quietly in their savings account is a number that changed everything. $10,000. That's it. Not 100,000, not a million, 10,000. And today I'm going to show you exactly why that one number rewires your brain, flips your financial future upside down, and creates a momentum that most people never recover from, in the best way possible. I'm Will, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, so you don't have to. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what $10,000 does for you, let's talk about what not having it does to you, because most people don't realize how close to the edge they actually are. According to the Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances, the median amount Americans have across all their bank accounts, checking, savings, money market, everything, is just $8,000. That's the middle. Half the country has less than that. But here's where it gets worse. Bankrate's emergency savings report found that only 46% of adults in the United States have enough saved to cover 3 months of expenses, fewer than half. And nearly 1 in 4 adults have absolutely zero emergency savings. Nothing, not a dollar. So when I say $10,000 changes everything, I'm not being dramatic. For most people, hitting that number means jumping from the bottom half of the country to a completely different category. You go from surviving to something that actually resembles stability. But the money in the account isn't even the main thing that changes. It's what happens inside your head. Let me introduce you to 2 people. We'll call them Marcus and Jada. Marcus makes $55,000 a year. Decent job, not flashy. He's got about $400 in savings on any given week. Every unexpected expense, a flat tire, a doctor visit, a broken phone, sends him scrambling. He puts it on a credit card. He borrows from next month to pay for this month. And the stress, it's not just financial. It lives in his chest. It wakes him up at 3 in the morning. It makes him snap at people he loves over things that have nothing to do with money. Now meet Jada. She makes about the same as Marcus, maybe even a little less, but Jada has $10,000 tucked away in a high-yield savings account. And when her car battery dies on a Wednesday morning in January, she doesn't panic. She doesn't put it on a credit card. She drives to the shop, pays the $200, goes to work, and forgets about it by lunch. Same emergency, 2 completely different experiences. And the difference isn't income, it's the cushion. Research published in the journal PLOS1 found that the ability to save money, even among people with lower incomes, is more closely linked to psychological factors than to how much someone actually earns. Things like self-control, optimism, and feeling connected to your future self are what separates savers from non-savers. And here's what the data says happens when someone like Jada builds that cushion. The Financial Health Network found that roughly 75% of Americans who describe themselves as financially secure also report their mental well-being as excellent or very good. Financial security doesn't just reduce stress, it fundamentally changes how you see the world. That's the first shift. $10,000 buys you something no amount of income can: peace of mind. And peace of mind is the foundation everything else gets built on. Here's what nobody tells you about saving your first $10,000. The hardest part isn't the last 1,000, it's the first one. Think about it. When you've got nothing saved, every dollar you set aside feels like a dollar you could have spent. A meal out with friends, a new pair of shoes, something, anything that makes the grind feel worth it. Saving feels like deprivation when you're starting from zero. But something bizarre happens around the $5,000 to $7,000 mark. You stop thinking of your savings as money you're losing and start thinking of it as money you're building. The psychology flips. Instead of "I can't spend this," it becomes "I don't want to spend this." There's a massive difference between those 2 statements, and it's the difference between willpower and identity. When you finally cross that $10,000 line, an invisible wall breaks down. You realize something that changes everything. If I did this once, I can do it again. That's the compound effect, not of interest, but of belief. And belief is the real currency that nobody talks about. Let me put it another way. Getting to $10,000 proves something to you that no YouTube video, no book, no podcast ever can. It proves that you are the kind of person who can build wealth. Not theoretically, actually. You have the evidence sitting in your account. All right, now let's talk numbers, because the psychological shift is powerful, but the math is where $10,000 starts doing things that feel almost unfair. Let's say you take that $10,000 and invest it in a broad market index fund, something like an S&P 500 fund. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned an average of about 10% per year since the 1950s, with dividends reinvested. Now, I'm going to use a more conservative number. Let's call it 8%, because I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver. If you invest $10,000 and never add another dime, which you, by the way, absolutely should keep adding, but even if you don't, at 8% compounded annually, here's what happens. After 5 years, that $10,000 becomes roughly $14,700. Fine, nice, not life-changing. After 10 years, it's about $21,600. You've more than doubled your money without doing a single thing. After 20 years, it's roughly $46,600. You nearly quintupled your money. And after 30 years, that original $10,000 is now sitting at over $100,000 from doing absolutely nothing except leaving it alone. But here's where it gets really interesting. If you keep adding just $200 a month on top of that original $10,000, which is totally doable for most people, after 30 years at 8%, you're looking at roughly $390,000, almost $400,000 from $10,000 and $200 a month. That's not magic, that's math. And it's math that only works if you have that initial seed money to start it. The $10,000 is the launchpad. Everything else is gravity doing the work. There's something about $10,000 that goes beyond the numbers and beyond the psychology. It's what I call the options effect. Let me explain. When you have no savings, you are trapped. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean your actual life choices shrink. Your boss treats you like garbage. You can't quit because you can't survive 2 weeks without a paycheck. Your apartment has mold and the landlord won't fix it. You can't move because you don't have first and last month's rent for a new place. A friend invites you to go in on a small business idea. You can't even consider it because every dollar you have is already spoken for. Zero savings means zero options, and zero options means someone else is always making decisions for your life. Now, think about what changes with $10,000 in reserve. Your boss treats you badly, you can walk out and survive for 3 or 4 months while you find something better. You don't have to beg, you don't have to tolerate, you can choose. Your rent situation is terrible, you've got the money to move. You've got leverage now. A small opportunity shows up, a side business, a freelance gig, a certification that costs money but could double your income. You can say yes. $10,000 doesn't just sit in your bank account. It sits behind every decision you make. It's a silent negotiator. It's the thing that lets you say no to what's bad and yes to what's better. And the people who have it, they carry themselves differently. They speak differently in meetings. They negotiate differently. Not because they're waving money around, but because they know, deep in their gut, that they're not desperate. And people can feel that. Let's talk about something that traps more people than almost anything else: debt. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York has consistently reported that American household debt sits in the trillions. Credit cards, student loans, auto loans, medical bills, it stacks up fast. And the interest on that debt is what keeps people running on a hamster wheel. Here's the trap. When you don't have savings, every emergency becomes debt. Your car breaks down, credit card. Unexpected medical bill, payment plan with interest. Washer breaks, buy now, pay later. Each one of these is a tiny anchor, and enough tiny anchors will hold down a ship. But when you have $10,000, you break the cycle. Emergencies stop creating debt. And when emergencies stop creating debt, your existing debt can actually start shrinking because you're not adding new weight to the pile every other month. Think about Marcus earlier. Every emergency sent him deeper into the hole. But Jada, she handles the emergency with cash, moves on and keeps chipping away at whatever debt she does have without new debt showing up to replace it. That's the escape hatch. $10,000 stops the bleeding, and once the bleeding stops, healing can actually begin. This is the part most finance channels won't tell you, and honestly, it's the most important section of this entire video. $10,000 rewrites your identity. Before you have it, you're someone who can't save. You're someone who isn't good with money. You're someone who will figure it out eventually. Those aren't just words, they're a self-concept. They're the story you tell yourself every day, and that story drives your behavior. After $10,000, the story changes. Now you're someone who built something from nothing. You're someone who delayed gratification and won. You're someone who has proof, real, tangible, numerical proof that discipline works. And this new identity doesn't just affect your money, it bleeds into everything. You start taking better care of your health because you realize you're the kind of person who invests in the long term. You start setting boundaries in relationships because someone who respects their own future doesn't tolerate disrespect in the present. You start pursuing goals you'd written off because the voice that used to say you'll never get there just got proven wrong. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau defines financial well-being as a person's sense of security and freedom of choice, both in the present and in the future. And that's exactly what $10,000 delivers. Not just dollars, freedom, choice, agency.
The money is the proof, but the transformation is the point. All right, so you're sold. $10,000 is the threshold, the launchpad, the identity shift. But how do you actually get there? Let's make this practical. Real numbers, no fluff. Let's say you can save $300 a month. That puts you at $10,000 in about 33 months, under 3 years. That's real. That's doable. It's not overnight, but it's also not a decade away. Can you do $500 a month? You're there in 20 months, under 2 years. Even at just $150 a month, you hit $10,000 in about 5.5 years. And that might sound like forever, but here's the thing. Those 5.5 years are going to pass whether you save or not. The only question is whether future you is standing on solid ground or still dangling by a thread. Here are 3 things that will make the difference. First, automate it. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to a separate savings account the day your paycheck hits, before you see it, before you can spend it. Make it invisible. Behavioral research consistently shows that automated savings dramatically increases follow-through compared to manual transfers because you remove the decision entirely. Second, make the account boring. Put it in a high-yield savings account with no debit card attached. The point is to make it slightly annoying to access. Not impossible, you still need it for real emergencies, but just inconvenient enough that you won't dip into it for a concert ticket. Third, track the number. Put it on your phone's home screen. Tape it to your bathroom mirror. I don't care where, but seeing that number climb does something to your brain. It feeds the identity shift. Every time you watch it go from 4,200 to 4,500, something inside you says, keep going. That's all it takes. Automation, separation, and visibility. Here's the truth that makes all of this worth it. $10,000 is not the destination. It's the door. Once you walk through it, you'll realize something that might sound strange right now. The second $10,000 is easier than the first, and the third is easier than the second, because by then you've changed. You're not the same person who started at zero. Your habits are different. Your confidence is different. The math is working for you instead of against you, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be starts closing faster than you ever thought possible. Most people will never save $10,000, not because they can't, but because they don't believe the number matters enough to try. They think wealth starts at 100,000 or 1,000,000. They skip the foundation and wonder why nothing they build ever stands. Don't be most people. Start the transfer tonight, even if it's $50, especially if it's $50, because the number in your account matters far less than the signal it sends to your brain, the signal that says, we're building something now. I'm Will. Money made simple, wealth made real. I'll see you in the next one.